Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show. I'm Martin Willis, your host. And if you pay attention to this topic, you'll see there's quite a bit going on. Today there was a hearing on drones. I thought that was interesting. There's all kinds of. It seems like there's some whistleblowers that are coming forward. So far, it looks pretty legitimate. I haven't really, checked everything out all the way through, but it seems like we have some whistleblowers coming through that. One of them is on the Immaculate Constellation that was talked about at the last hearing, on UAP. So just a couple things. First of all, if you are planning to go to Contact in the Desert, I am going to be there. I'm not going to be speaking, but I'm going to be speaking at another couple of conferences coming up. But anyway, I love to hang with the audience. So if you're going to be there, you can always email me, Martin at Martin at podcastufo.com. And we can, definitely meet up somewhere. Maybe even a bunch of us might do a show or something. I'm not really sure what's going to happen with any of that. So anyway, check out. There's just a couple more days left to low ticket prices, and then they go up to the regular price. Unfortunately, I have to say a little bit of bad news. It's not really a little bit, it's actually big bad news because we lost an icon just a couple days ago on the 27th. Earl Gray Anderson, he's been on the show a few times, I think 3 times, but I got to meet him last summer, and he was a heck of a guy. And he passed away on the 27th early in the morning. I'm dedicating this show to him, and if you pay attention to the end of the show, right at about the 52-minute mark, I'm going to be running a little tribute to him that ends with a song that a partial song of his. So that'll be right at the end of this show. So I'm really looking forward to talk to our guest tonight. And so far, we just have one of them in there, and hopefully the other one will be coming in. He's having a little bit of computer trouble. But the Tedesco brothers, John and Gerry, or Gerald Tedesco, they have this RV full of equipment that they're doing some researching on UFOs in the Long Island area, Long Island Sound. I know there's a lot of people that talk about, it's a really busy air traffic area too. So, but they have caught some things that are that just can't be explained away as air traffic. Just a couple things. Also, we have a blog this week. Per usual, this one is called a 1972 UFO and Creature Report from Florida. It's a real wacky one. It happened on January 28th, 1974. The guy held it to himself for a long time. He saw this weird, after this craft encounter, he was out on a fishing boat, and actually the incident actually happened in 1972. He kept it quiet for a while, but it looked like a devil-like creature, and then he had some plant that looked like a devil in his yard or something. Very strange. Very, very, very strange encounter. But Charles is really good at looking these things up and researching them. So check that out at podcastufo.com. Thank you all for supporting the show. Anyone can do that for less than a cup of coffee. 1 cup of coffee, you can support a whole month. And that's over on our website through Patreon. And you can get an ad-free audio podcast. And that's where our main audience is. And I want to do a shout out to all you people that listen to the audio. Thanks so much. It has grown tremendously over the years all over the world. And I love hearing from people. So drop me a line. But I always say, if you're going to drop me a line, just drop me a couple of sentences, not I have a little ADD, okay? So it's hard for me to read like a 4-page email. But anyway, I do appreciate hearing from you. I always try to respond. I do the best I can. But anyway, I'm going to bring our one guest in at this point, John. Welcome to the show, John.
Hello, Martin. How you doing?
I'm doing well. I don't know. How's your brother doing?
Well, he's having a little bit of a computer issue, and he's actually heading over here. So
that's good.
He'll catch the show. It's probably going to be about 15 minutes, though.
Oh, yeah, that's fine. That's good. Now, you're right now, you are in your vehicle.
Yes. So I'm right now. I'm sitting in the Nightcrawler, and we're actually out at a location. Started doing a little bit of research, but not much tonight. just basically setting up surveillance. We have some instrumentation that we're testing out for the weekend because we have some special folks coming in.
Okay.
Yeah. So
what do you mean by special folks? You have some that coming in to research with you?
Yes, they're actually from law enforcement, and
oh wow.
Yeah. So we generally invite people. We have various different guests that come out once in a while. It's we've had scientists out here. We've had of course law enforcement, and we've had quite a few other researchers also.
And wow. And boy, I might want to come down there and do a hands-on show, right? I mean, I would love to really check that out personally sometime if that's a possibility. It sounds fascinating what you're doing. And you have so much equipment. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? The type of sensory equipment you have? It looks like you may have locked up. I don't know if you can hear me, but looks like a lockup on this end. You may have to jump out and come back in again. I'm not sure what the Wi-Fi is there inside that vehicle. You're still frozen. Well, this is the beauty of live radio. So, yep, you're gone, and he'll be coming back in. But anyway, so they do a lot of research with this vehicle. They have all kinds of, equipment in it. One of the two brothers is retired, and they go out and they've done some filming. Plus, they get, things on radar, all the different things. And I do believe that we're going to be talking about tonight that they had a USO encounter. So I think we're going to try you again. You're back.
Okay, I lost it. We had a glitch in the Wi-Fi out here. Unfortunately, I'm out by the water, so it's kind of a tough signal. We've got a remote Wi-Fi system.
Oh, it's remote Wi-Fi. Wow. Yeah. Okay. Well, so far, you may want to just to be safe. And I hate to do this live on the air, but just to be safe, you may want to go back into your settings and turn your camera control way down to low quality. That will help. We got to get every bit of bandwidth you can in a situation like this. But anyway, what am I looking at for equipment? Let's talk about what you have in that.
So there. Yeah, so this is a sitting area in the RV in the lab. It's on the opposite side. We have a slew of instrumentation. We have various different radar systems, marine-based radar. We have X-band, Y-band, and they're basically on a different axes of geometry. One is a vertical scan radar, and the other one is a horizontal scan. And we do that to get to basically better profiles of aircraft that are over our area within a 4-mile swath. And we have millimeter wave radars, small portable systems as well. Of course, the radar required an FCC license, an experimental license to get, especially on a mobile vehicle. They're marine based, and it's not easy test to get that kind of a licensing on that.
I bet.
But
now let's just address. First of all, there was a hearing on drones. I mentioned that. In the beginning today. And I do want to talk about that because it's still such a big question mark to me.
Yes.
What all the drones and incursions are, and, on military bases, and not just here, like not just New Jersey. People say, oh, that was just New Jersey. No, it was not only was it all over the country, it was heavily done, there in New Jersey, but still it was in all these military bases, and not just the United States. So it's bizarre.
Right. All over the world. And here heavily in the Northeast. I mean, we've had quite a few incursions over Long Island, Staten Island as well, up in Connecticut. We've talked to many folks in Pennsylvania, many sightings. Some of the stuff that we've actually investigated out here, we're over an airport called Kabreski out in West Hampton. And there was a night that they actually had 17 incursions or 17 objects. And they, at the time, they had incorporated radar detection technology and drone busters. And I don't think it yielded any real results as far as, if it was a typical drone, would have had some kind of an effect. And I don't think in this case it did.
Wow. Yeah, there's so many questions about these drones. I did a show on the drones. I had a drone expert, but he's also an astronomer, and
Mhm.
he's into the UFO topic. Mark D'Antonio, he was on with
Right.
that, and Nick Pope, and for an opinion from Nick, but it is bizarre, and it seems like it's happening on a yearly basis, and and then I had a firsthand witness who just was describing it as something pretty unusual. It's not just
Mhm.
not your typical drone of any kind. I mean, and it does, it would make sense if it was our adversaries spying
Right.
on us, possibly. I don't know. I mean, there anything can happen if you throw enough money at it, and they could definitely come up with, something to do that with.
Right, right. And we started noticing them back in November of 22. We had a 3 week period where we had a combination of what looked like a possibility of drone-like vehicles. I don't want to call them drones because we don't not quite sure what they were. But we also had the consistent and persistent orbs that
Hmm.
were out there. They have low libido. The luminous intensity is generally anything that's lower than a lux, and you need night vision equipment in order to see them.
Hmm.
But this particular night, again, 3 weeks out of the year, we saw quite a few zigzag patterns of these drones. I mean, in one night alone, we saw between 15 and 20 of them.
Hmm.
They seem, oddly enough, they seem to be almost surveilling the orbs. I mean, that's confusing. It's and to this day we're not really clear on what was going on. But the only time we saw these orbs is when these I want to say drone-like because they had the visible lights and they were pretty bright, and you'd see that in the path of the beams, you could see these orbs either just below them or just in front of these drone-like vehicles.
Hmm.
And again, it's to us it looked like some kind of a surveillance operation.
It very well might be. You know what was really strange about that hearing today? I didn't watch the whole thing. I just watched bits and pieces of it.
Mhm.
But you know who was absent there was the FAA. That's a
Right.
government program. Why weren't they there? They said they'd be glad to answer anything, in writing, any questions in writing for the
Right.
hearing. But I mean, they're the ones who said that the drones had, permission to do. I mean, they flip-flopped on it. The
Right.
FAA flip-flopped.
Yeah.
First they said we have no idea what they are. Then they said, oh, they did have permission to, do what they said
Yeah. So it was
they were
definitely
doing.
a lackluster response.
Right.
Yeah.
And who knows what will happen with that. But let me just ask you, I remember, looking into that whole area, and, you have a very, very busy air traffic area.
Yes.
And so, there have in the past, I'm not saying this is what you're doing, but a lot of people have seen, the headlights out on the water, the plane coming in, and it looks like, a UFO. A lot of people have reported those things over the years. So, where do you I'm sure you're aware of all that, but
Yes.
you
Yes.
are trying to get more equipment involved, to make these decisions what these things are, correct?
Right. Right. And the first part of the study that we did out there was basically to understand and isolate more prosaic air traffic. And in order to make those determinations, we actually had to look at the flight paths of these aircraft, and we needed hyperspectral cameras to do that. We needed the radar, of course, was a big help, with determining the aircrafts that are coming in, mostly in the arrivals into JFK. We see them, quite a bit of them in the glide path, and when they're in the glide path, they could be there for several minutes, and you'd see the intense beacons on these aircraft that almost look like they're stationary. at first glance, we've had folks that approached us down there would say, not knowing what they are in the flight path, and saying, well, if you give it a few minutes, you'll see that it does move on, and as they make the turn, of course, you're not in the direct beam of
right.
the landing lights, but it's this kind of stuff is again, it took careful examination and the right equipment in order to see it, especially optical zoom. We needed cameras with a good zoom system in order to look at the fuselage, look at the wing structures, the navigation lights, that sort of thing. But again, it's between radar, thermal cameras. You developed a procedure and methodology in order to isolate, again, with what was prosaic and what was in the other bucket, which we had quite a bit of as well.
Right. Now, I do have, getting back to the drones, I want to thank everyone in chat. Thank you all for being here live. I appreciate that. We have this person's been listening for a long time, but she recently has been commenting really interesting comments. Basically makes sense. Whatever they are, they seem to know the laws and policies around drones in depth. And then further, this one here, if an adversary, then you would play dumb until you had a solution and handle them in order not to tip them off, so you can create countermeasures, which is, I agree with all that. I mean, that's truly what could be happening, just play dumb until they figure it out. I think that's what they've done in the UFO world, as far as our government has for forever. But maybe they don't have the full answer. I say that quite often. Maybe when it comes to UFOs, they don't really have the full answer. But I do believe that there are, with what we've seen just in the last week, that they know a lot more than they lead on to know.
Right. And what confuses it a little bit more too is that everybody's eyes were to the sky. You'd hear about various different observations, and many times it does turn out to be the typical air traffic, commercial planes, small planes that are not, landing lights are can be a little strange at times. They're not typical. Even on some of the newer planes where they're using LED lighting rather than halogen lights, they do look a little strange. But it's the other stuff that the missing radar data that that we've encountered quite a few times, and thermal images as well.
You have like the FLIR? Do you have like a FLIR?
Yeah, the forward-looking infrared. With thermal, we've had a tough time trying to identify these objects. An aircraft, easy to see with the fuselage. You can see the heat from the engines and that sort of thing. It's but these drones, at times we don't get a thermal signature at all. And the same I can say with the orb sightings as well.
And the drones, couldn't a lot of them be electric? Would you get a thermal signature on electric?
Sure.
Oh, you would, because the battery heats up or whatever it is.
Right. Anything that produces even a fraction of a degree from the environment.
I see.
You'll see that silhouette. And of course, there's thermal palettes that can be used to help enhance it, to make that identification. But again, it's been a tough thing to try to get any kind of reveal on this thing, is whether or not it is a commercial aircraft or not. And we have tons of data that we've been looking at, and even here, not too far from where I live, my house also. I've had objects over the house that I haven't been able to identify. Which is near another airport, which is MacArthur Airport, which is a smaller airport here.
So I guess I want to ask you, first of all, what led you into doing what you're doing? I mean, have you always had an interest in UFOs?
We have, but early on, and then of course life gets in the way, and it's a career with engineering. It's it took me down a different path, but we were always interested in the UFOs, the vernacular, I guess, the UAP now. But it wasn't until the ODNI report, that we had a little bit more of an interest. And originally, when we started out, when we built this this mobile laboratory, it was to do EMI emissions. We were looking at electromagnetic effects, they call it electrosmog in Europe. And what we were doing is was studying basically cancer clusters here on the island. And we wanted to do a survey from one end to the other, coast to coast. And in order to do that, we had to retrofit a mobile laboratory, a mobile vehicle with spectrum analyzers and basically a lot of RF equipment to make that analysis. And we transitioned from that to the UAP scene.
Wow.
Yeah, it's we heard that Avi Loeb, Dr. Avi Loeb over at Harvard University was putting together the Galileo project.
Yeah.
And we had contacted him at the time, and he was very interested in what we were using and our technology, our sensor technology. He asked us to come aboard, and we've been with them ever since.
Wow.
Only with the research part of it, we took two different tracks. So we went out on our own with a mobile track, and they had more of a stationary, sensor pack. But it's I know they're in development too. They've started out with some stuff, and they've been analyzing quite a few, over 500,000 different objects out there. We certainly we stay in contact, and we got our ear out.
Yeah, no, that's great. So Douglas Trumbull and my friend Mark D'Antonio put together UFO TOG. That's what it was called years ago. But it never really went anywhere. And what Douglas Trumbull was a special effects guy. He did some major work, 2001, Space Odyssey, things like that. And he was well off, and he took a Hummer and fitted out a Hummer with all this equipment. But it never really, they decided to do something stationary, and I'm not sure really what happened with it then. Something you said earlier intrigued me, and I wanted to follow up on that. And you mentioned that you have law enforcement coming. And is this something that happens?
It is occasionally, and we do have members that help us out as well. And it's this is with the UAP Disclosure Fund, and we have some members that are coming out to basically oversee what we have and what we're doing out here. And we've been working with them as far as putting together some kind of an instrument system that can be used by law enforcement for detection purposes, and and also for safety as well, because we simply don't know what can something like this can entail if you're shining a light at these objects, and whether or not there's something to be concerned about.
Right. I mean, a friend that's no longer with us, but he back in 1978 was with a bunch of police officers, and they had this thing right over them and shined a beam of light up at it. One of the officers did, but anyway, the thing shot a beam of light down to them and between all of them. And this was a delta shaped, he called it a flying Dorito years ago, but it's an incredible case. And yeah, a lot of times there are law officers involved, and they're the ones that respond to people when they're having a sighting. So I'm glad that it's happening. Here's a question here. Have you ever come across any UAP that looked like faint stars zigzagging in the sky? And he further says that we see these here in Northeast Pennsylvania. Thank you, Victor. Right.
What we call pseudostars is, where we see them stationary for long periods of time, assuming that they could potentially be stars. We'll mark them up on we have a monitor here, and we'll take a dry erase marker, mark the monitor up, and see the movement. If a constellation moves, we'll see the movement of the other stars as well. But in this case, we'll see these things that they'll just sit there, in the stationary for long periods of time, and then all of a sudden they'll just disappear. And we have that documented.
Wow. Yeah, I was on a ship out in the Caribbean last year, and the band The Zombies.
Yes.
So I was. This is just a funny story. I've told it before, but I'll tell it again. So I was getting coffee one morning, and I look over and I said, "Oh, I know you." And the guy starts laughing, and he says, "Oh yeah, and this is Steve from the Zombies right here."
Oh, okay.
So
That's
yeah.
nice.
So anyway, he asked me what I did. I said, I'm fine art antique appraiser and blah blah blah. But I said I do something really weird also, and he goes, "Oh, tell me." And I said, "I do a show on UFOs," and his jaw dropped. He said, "Oh my God, we were meant to meet last night." He goes, "And I've been telling everyone in the band about this." He was out on the deck by himself. They have an upper deck, and he was out on the deck, and all of a sudden he sees this star. He thought it was a star, but it came down, and he says, then it zigged this way, and then it shot off
Mm-hmm.
to the right and gone. He said, "Oh my God," he was going to be on the show. I'm in touch with him now and then. And he said, "Well, I'll think about it, but I'd really like to have him, explain exactly what happened." So what do you think something like that is this all just a mystery as well, that unsolvable mystery when it's that far away and all that?
Well, it is. It's kind of difficult when they're when the objects are that far away, and they visually they look like the size of a star. It's
Mm-hmm.
there's not whole lot of detail you can get on them other than the movement, the anomalous movement of these objects. Of course, is telltale sign that it's there's some kind of an unusual play out there, and we have tried to use we have high zoom cameras in excess of 100 times magnification, and even with high zoom cameras, it's very difficult to get a good focal range on it, a good focus point. And whether or not there's something else that is adding to the mix, that's creating that, either a possibility of a field of some sort, or some kind of a structure around these objects. Some of the objects that we've seen looks like a cube. It looks like a polyhedron of some sort, and most of the time, what we see is a reflective surface on one side of that polyhedron, which is almost like it's got a geometric, like almost like a rectangular form to it. I know that one of the Navy pilots, Ryan Graves, had described an object as a cube within some kind
Sphere.
of a blister or bubble, a sphere.
Right.
And that's very similar to what we've been seeing out here. Not as clear, and some of the objects, if they're extremely low intensity, luminous intensity, what we'll do is we'll use some of the IR equipment that we have, and we have near infrared. We also have shortwave infrared as well, and we've seen them do something that looks like almost like signature management, where these objects will go from visible light on up the, in this case down the electromagnetic frequency, all the way down to near infrared, and we see them basically bouncing back and forth, where we'll see it in one camera and not in another. And that's the kind of stuff that we've been documenting out here, by the coast.
Wow.
We've also had patterns of objects that would we would think that or we thought they would just move at a high rate of speed, and it turns out that the objects didn't move at all. They just changed their signatures.
Wow. Here's a interesting question. I'm not sure if you've been following the Skywatchers. They had their second video that came out, but so what do you think about the Skywatchers device that allegedly attracts UAP? I think they call it the dog whistle.
Yes.
I'm not sure. At first I thought, are they talking about a real dog whistle, but I think it's just something in in the frequency or something like that. So do I detect that we have your brother?
Yes, just arrived.
Coming aboard? Hello, Gerry. Whoops. How did that happen? All right. Somehow they must have hung up. So anyway, it's looking good. He should be back in any second. But yeah, live radio is really interesting. So thank you for the questions, everyone. And it does help if you do put them in caps, like this example right here. And yeah, that is bizarre. I don't know. There's been people talking about this type of thing for many years, that somehow they can attract, the UFOs somehow. I've also heard people say this. There's a gentleman I had on the show many times over the years. I haven't in quite a while, Ray Stanford. And he used to say that he used to get a feeling. I think I'm going to bring them back, and I think they're both here.
No.
There you are.
Hey, Martin.
Hi. Nice to meet you, Gerry. Do you like Gerald or Gerry? Does it matter?
Gerry's fine.
Okay. All right. I'm going to add your name to this. But welcome. So we've been talking about, I don't know if you've been able to listen to this live at all on your way over here, but
no, I was fighting traffic.
oh yeah. Well, I'm glad you made it. And yeah, it looks a little tight in there. You're a little bit squeezed, but you're in the sitting area. That's what you call that?
Yes. This is the eating area of the RV. It's the only place that that actually looks more like home. Everything else is all instrumentation.
How much does that thing weigh? How much extra does it weigh?
I would be surprised if put on another 3,000 to 4,000 pounds.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff.
So you're talking about now. I'm sure you don't want people like driving out to meet you or whatever. But when it comes to someone that's like a real UFO researcher, someone that's serious about it, someone like me that does podcasts, do you ever like allow people to come in and go with you?
Yes, actually, quite a few times. We've had a lot of guests out there. Actually.
All right. Well, I'm thinking about a road trip. That's what I'm thinking about.
Sounds good.
So, we'll be talking about that later. Here's another question. This is from the person that actually kept telling me many times that I should have you two on this show. And thank you for that, UFO Jack. So have you found any patterns in Nightcrawler sightings that suggest a repeatable phenomenon or intelligence? Thank you for that.
Yes. Actually started probably around August 28th is when we started to see these things. They seem to have appeared more regularly or at least more consistently. And they always seem to appear in front of where our RV is or the mobile lab is. And it's and in some cases it almost looks like they're attracted to the radar when we put the radar on. Yeah, like
really?
Electromagnetic migration of some sort, we've even tried moving the laboratory to a different area. And within a very short period of time, we see this alignment occur once again. And almost like wedge patterns, we'll see a frenzy of activity out there, intermittent activity, but we'd see it on the radar. And we'd see these wedge patterns, not only, out by the water, the ocean, but on the bay side as well, which is behind us. Which is very unusual. And when John says wedge patterns, these are radar contacts, and they're objects that appear in a wedge formation towards the RV, but they're moving around quite a bit. Mm-hmm. And we're also picking that up on our hyperspectral cameras. We'll see these orbs of light that are hovering over the ocean there. We're right off the coastline.
Now this must be a lot like fishing. You can sit there for hours and hours and hours. I've done sky watches before. And you can sit there for hours and, you don't see anything. Yes. So I'm sure you get skunked too, but you're out there and you try again, right? I mean, that's what it's about. Right. Because this is a problem. It's always been a non-repeatable type of situation and, kind of a fluke, and I'm so lucky that I had a UFO sighting in 2007 because my life is really changed to, amazing life. It's such a wonderful thing. I would have never looked into it, and I'd be missing out on these great people and this great information and the possibilities of the mystery, of the puzzle being solved.
Yeah, some of these things are quite profound. Yeah, and the whole I think the thing with this too is any kind of research, boots on the ground. It's persistence. There are nights that you'll be out there and there'll be nothing really to talk about, nothing to see. And then you'll have a night where you'll have a tremendous amount of activity. But it's about staying the course and being persistent.
Well, let me ask you this: when that type of things happens, do you say, okay, this was a Monday, this was a clear day, this was this and that? Do you take all that information in to see if it's like there's any type of patterns?
Yes, we tried to look for patterns, but it was pretty random when they would show up. So I mean, it's like John saying, there's some days that there was just absolutely nothing happening, and in others, these objects would appear, and it would appear at random times. It could be midnight, it could be 2 o'clock in the morning, it could be 4 o'clock in the morning, and then no activity.
Yeah, and then again, we were talking about before about this almost like a level of intelligence. I mean, we were talking about electromagnetic migration. When the radar is running, there are nights that we do have more or less more of a frenzy of activity. It's and whether or not there's something going on with the interaction with the radar system and these objects, there seems to be some kind of a something to it.
And some of the objects we've seen, and we've actually had the hitchhiker effect.
Oh, God.
Yes. Yeah. There's definitely an awareness of us, and there's some almost like that, almost as acting as an interface between these two things in some way.
Wow. Right. Now, what about electromagnetic? There's a lot of talk about that. I've known a few different people that have been involved. It's been involved with her car stalled, and that would be explained through some type of electromagnetic situation. Is that something else you look to detect as well?
Yes.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, some of the sensors that we have are magnetometers, accelerometers, and we're monitoring that stuff all the time. Also, several different Geiger counters. So we're looking at the, not that we've had anything that, was higher energy, that I would consider, gamma or cosmic rays or something along those lines, beta. But we have had, CME events that we've actually recorded while we were out there, these coronal mass ejections. It's, I think it was in August of 22. We actually recorded spikes. Normally the background radiation here on the island is anywhere between 10 and 30 counts per minute. And in this case, we had spikes that would put it over 50, 60, 70.
Were there aurora borealis at the time that you're aware of?
Yes, there was. We did have an observation down here with a colorful sky.
Yeah, it's beautiful when that happens. I love that. So when I picture Long Island, I've been on there a lot. I have cousins that live there, Levittown area, and then I had a friend that was toward the Hamptons, and but most of the time I spent was in the Levittown area. But I picture it's so hard to get away from people there. But maybe I just don't understand the layout. How do you get away from? I mean, another question, kind of related? Do you ever have people knocking on the door while you're trying to study something or whatever?
Only when we're there earlier during the day. If we start setting up earlier, at a certain time, we have a research permit to pretty much have control over that area.
Oh,
and so wow. People are directed to leave, say about 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock at the latest. But there's a time frame that's for the public to be out there.
Yeah, unless you got fishermen down there with
right.
Specific permits for that. Sky gazers you'll see occasionally out there, and they'll be out with their telescopes and so forth. And but we do have occasionally we do get a visitor that's interested in what we're doing.
Yeah, I'm sure. And what about daytime? Do you ever do anything daytime?
Yes, we have been out there daytime as well. Mostly at night. It's a night activity, and generally on the weekends. But we have been out there during the day, and we have had a couple of observations. Objects that seem to be dark, that don't have much much reflective characteristics, and you generally see them. Either at sunrise or twilight, conditions, but they're very difficult to see, and especially with the hyperspectral equipment that we use, the best time to use it, of course, utilize it is at night.
I see. Here's a question here from Tony. Do you do any cross-referencing between things like solar activity you just mentioned, such as lower high, and the amount of sightings? Is there any cross-referencings to anything natural to sightings? I guess that's to add on to that.
We haven't seen any major correlations with solar flare events or that kind of thing. Yeah, I mean, it's not that it happens very often. It's kind of rare anyway. But yeah, well, right now it is. It's pretty active. The sun's pretty active. But as far as any increase in sightings, that sort of thing, I don't think we see that at all. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Here's another question here. Have either brothers ever collaborated with James Fowler of Skywatcher? And has James shared any of his detection signatures?
We actually had we do some interviews occasionally with Ross Coulthart.
Oh yeah.
Ross Coulthart actually had given us a call and mentioned that Jake Barber from Skywatcher was interested in speaking with us. So we told him it was okay to give him our information if he did want to speak. Yeah, we haven't heard from him yet. I mean,
I never understood. I don't know. Maybe there are egos involved. I'm not sure why more people don't, cooperate, and because it's a group earthling effort, if you ask me, that we could just try to find out, more what's going on, and everybody can pitch in. That's how I always feel about it. Here's another question. Have you spoken with any of the Georgia Tech team who developed the Gremlin for AARO? Are you familiar with the Gremlin?
Yes, we're familiar with the Gremlin system. We haven't spoke to their team specifically. There was we had a go-between who spoke to one of the members, but we haven't spoken directly.
Mm-hmm. Now I have to ask you this. We're only like 10 minutes out to the end of the show, but I'm just feeling like I haven't talked to you enough, and I'm wondering if we can extend the show like another 20 minutes after this.
Sure.
But I want to end out on KGRA at 53 minutes just by doing my little tribute to Earl, just so they get to hear that, and then we'll just jump right back in. So it won't be the end of the show when I do that, but I'm also having a lot of people that are asking, I think, some pretty good questions here. And I know we don't have our phone systems temporarily out. Otherwise, we'd have these people call in. I think we talked about this. Is there any electromechanical signal that elicits more Nightcrawler sightings than others?
In our case, it's usually the radar, radar transmissions. We've had acoustic transmissions too, where we have responses. And we actually have responses with pulses of light, various kinds of light.
That's weird. So it's so puzzling, because there's a lot of people, I'm sure you've heard this question or this theory that there's consciousness involved.
Yes.
I mean, and that makes you wonder when some of these things, like there's like entanglement of some kind, or the observer, observing, and therefore it is, that type of weird thing. It just shows that we really don't know what the hell's going on around us.
And that's an interesting possibility. I mean, there was a paper written on that, the intelligent plasma hypothesis. Massimo Teodoranti had postulated that, and there was a full scientific team that actually wrote a paper on that.
Really? Wow, that's interesting. How long ago was that? Do you know?
Probably within the last year.
Oh, wow. I got to check that out. Here's another question here. Is there any old historical reporting of something like that over part of Long Island, the colonial area, indigenous legends, anything that you're aware of?
We've heard a lot of different stories. There's an area of Montauk out east end of Long Island where some of the Native Americans talk about seeing lights in the sky or lights over the water, or black lights, but they attribute it to spirits.
Oh yeah. But they've almost every indigenous, they have the oral history passed down also of the sky people. I mean, I think that's pretty fascinating. And it just seems no matter where they are, they have that. Here's another question here. Have you looked into the alleged connection of UAP and antineutrinos?
Antineutrinos.
I have no idea what that is, but I would say it's opposite of neutrino.
We haven't really done a deep dive in there. Maybe you have, John.
No, it's that's something that we're actually we're slated to have new equipment within the next year, and we're going to be looking closely at muons and that sort of thing, and looking at more specific radiation patterns.
Oh, here's one of my favorite people in the UFO world just chimed in here, Linda Zimmerman, great researcher in New York. Are you familiar with Linda?
Her name is very familiar.
Yeah. Anyway, she just wondered if you'd ever been up to Pine Bush, which actually I'm going to be the MC at the conference this year up there. But have you ever looked into the Pine Bush area?
We haven't yet, but we heard a lot of stories,
A lot of activity. Yeah.
Oh yeah, there were people that I've talked to over the years that they would say that they would sit on each side of the street with their lawn chairs every night and just watch the show of all the UFOs. I mean, there was so much activity in the Hudson River Valley, that whole area. So I don't know if that's still ongoing these days. I'm just not hearing about it that much. But perhaps you would think. I mean, it's such a puzzle when there's like these hotspots, and then there's that it's ongoing for a while and then gone. I mean, all over the world.
Yeah, flaps.
Yeah, the flaps and then no flap at all.
Yep.
And here's another question here. Do orange orbs have a heat signature? That's interesting.
The interesting thing is we haven't seen much of a heat signature with these objects, no matter what color they were.
Right. That's
Most
something.
of them seem to be more on the cooler side,
Right.
which is interesting.
Yeah, and even beyond that, it's any of these objects that we've tried to document of having some kind of a thermal signature. It's been very difficult to get anything. Even objects that we feel are relatively close. It's the thermal camera we have has an optical zoom system, 30 times, and we can look at an aircraft at 30,000 feet and make out the silhouette of the fuselage very easily. But these objects, for some reason, we're just not getting any kind of a thermal signature.
Wow, so puzzling. And you're seeing quite a few of these. Obviously, I mean, you seem to make it seem like they're fairly common.
Yeah, the orb variety is what we see more often. We've occasionally seen cylindrical objects as well. Yeah, but they're pretty rare.
Yeah, we've documented that twice, but mostly these spheroids.
Anything you would consider to be called tic-tac shaped?
Yes. That's those cylindrical objects. We actually have one recorded. It was an early morning sighting, an observation that we crossing the path of an airliner that was on arrival into JFK.
Wow, amazing. So here's another question here. Just want to make sure I didn't miss anyone. Do you have any of Jim Segala's MUPAS devices, MUPAS devices on board?
No, we're familiar with Jim's system, but we haven't dived into his equipment.
Okay. If you don't mind, I'm going to keep firing these. These are really great questions, I think. I mean, we have a pretty good audience, I think, that really is thinking a lot of these things out. How do they handle deconfliction across the spectrum management? Whatever the hell that means. How do you handle it?
So it sounds like they're talking about how we separate prosaics from anomalous objects and the methods we use to separate the different parameters.
Yeah, we have a novel sensor system. Some of these sensors are fairly expensive, but we can look at specific wavelengths. We'll look at something in the near infrared, which covers anywhere between about 800 and 1,000 nanometers. We have shortwave sensors that will take take it up from 1100 nanometers on up to 2600 nanometers. We have mid-range is all mid-range IR, which will look at the more of a cross between a real heat signature and something that is more of a visual impact in the infrared. And then on the other side, we're looking at the ultraviolet as well. We have sensors, of course, visible light, and then you have ultraviolet A, B, and C. We have sensors for each one of those particular ranges. UVC is anywhere between 180 and about 225 nanometers. Then you have B, which is 300 nanometers on up to about 364. And then, of course, you got A, which takes that up that realm from 375 on up to about 400.
Yeah, so we're looking for a pretty wide swath of the electromagnetic spectrum.
Yeah, so we're looking pretty much, looking at almost the whole electromagnetic spectrum at this point. And of course, ionizing radiation, which is above the UV.
Oh, wow.
And
sounds like you have. I mean, are people suggesting to you, oh, you should get this and that, or do you think you have it pretty well covered for what you may be but to encounter?
We're always open to new ideas and new technologies. We have heard, quite a bit of stuff from some folks. But based upon what we encounter down there is, we'll feel like there may be an inadequacy of a range, or a wavelength range, where we have to extend it a little bit more. And initially, when we started this research, we had started with night vision cameras. Most of the night vision cameras were either image intensifiers, which amplify the available light. The starlight. The only problem is they have roll-offs. They have tight roll-offs at 1,000 nanometers, which really doesn't cover very deeply in the IR. So we'll be missing some stuff, and we'll have to go with, passive cameras that do have image sensors that are capable of raising that up into the deeper near infrared, and then of course into the higher order infrared wavelengths.
Okay. Well, can you hold that thought, Gerry?
Yeah.
Okay, try to hold that thought, because I have to close out for KGRA radio. And also I want to give a little tribute to a good friend that we lost a couple of days ago, our Earl Anderson. We're really going to miss him. Wonderful man. And here's just a little clip I put together, actually from the last show I did last September with him. Here it is. Earl, welcome.
Hi there. How are you doing, Martin? It's good to see you, buddy.
Yeah, good to see you. I really enjoyed hanging out with you and your talks that you did in Texas. I thought you did a wonderful presentation, and
I had so much fun. I enjoyed myself, that's for sure. And
I got to tell you, you are really loved by the UFO community. I could really see that by the reactions of people around you, and they really, really look up to you, and you're really highly respected, and you could really tell that. And you got that smile. I like that smile. You always have that smile. But
thank you.
And you're also
I love what I do.
Yeah, that's good. And I'm also going to talk about you're a musician, and a nice one. And at the end of this show, with the very tail end, I got a sample of your clip. It's a partial song that I had to shorten it up a bit. So thank you so much, Earl.
Thank you, Martin.
All right. And we'll be talking soon. Take care.
Scintillas in the stream, hoping for what's true. I'm trawling for honor in this shallow pool. Borealis starlit crown arches over the Puget Sound. His hair drapes the horizon can. Who's my lucky star? That is the only point that's
Well, that's it. We're going to miss you, Earl.
What a wonderful tribute.
That's great.
Thank you. I told you to hold your thought, Gerry. Do you remember what it was?
Okay. The reason we're mentioning the entire electromagnetic spectrum is because the objects we're observing seem to be able to change their spectral range. They seem to be able to shift through each of those spectral we've actually documented the change between the visible light into the infrared, near infrared, and into the shortwave as well.
Well, isn't that peculiar? Isn't that just another real mystery? How something could change like that? I mean, or is it something that happens? And does anything like this ever happen in nature?
Not that we're aware of.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, well, the thing too is that human beings, we have a very, very narrow, visual,
Right.
perception as far as what's going on in nature. So, other animals, can see, beyond the visible light that humans can see, and certainly sounds and even electromagnetic, even magnetic fields.
What a puzzle. Here's, I think, is a great question here for someone. Can you recommend equipment for us to buy for searching, from their own backyards?
Sure. I think the most important part of the instrument arsenal is having a good night vision camera, I would focus more on the passive cameras, not so much. There's image intensifiers. There's some cameras. Aurora makes one. The Aurora Pro, the Aurora Black. The only issue I have with that is that the image intensifiers themselves, again, have a narrow range. They starlight is great. They can pick up the starlight in the visible range. Some of the IR as well, but they do have a range, a maximum range that they can capture. Some of the newer cameras are using Starvis sensors, Sony sensors, and these sensors are they call them IMX, the IMX 442s, 464s, any cameras that utilize them. I've seen some on the market that are under $300. And they do a really good job, and their color as well. So they do a real respectable job at night. And if you're
it's not
stargazer, wonderful.
Yeah, you think about that green tone. That's what we used to see a lot.
Yes,
And,
the green and the white.
so now they're actually in color. Are they reflecting the correct color, or is it just in different colors?
Yeah, it's the colors are. They're consumer grade cameras. I mean, it's but I would say that they're respectable. They're within. If you looked at the chromatic spectrum, it's I would say it's probably within about 10% of the actual color, the phase of the color. Which is good for a consumer grade camera.
Oh, I would say. Here's a question about civilian drone. Would one actually show up on a FLIR or IR?
Yes, absolutely.
So, but what is, you mentioned before, but I can't remember exactly what you said, John, about the differences on the drones that you've actually witnessed.
Right.
So can you talk a little bit about what the differences are?
Right. So the drone-like vehicles that we've been seeing, and like I said, but going back to November of 22, we saw. So I would say it was a flap. It was there was quite a few objects out there, and and they seem to have a time frame. They would come out around 7 o'clock at night, and around 11:30, 12 o'clock, you wouldn't see any more of them. Other than these orbs would be out there, pretty much all night long. But these drones seem to have a time frame. Also, again, some of our equipment, hyperspectral equipment, very, very hard to get a detection in some cases. And one of the biggest, of course, was the thermals. Getting a thermal image on it. They seem to fly for hours at a time, which for most drones, I mean, must have a hell of a battery source, in order to do that.
Puzzle.
The other thing I would say is that we're not the only ones that had noticed that they're difficult to see thermally, the structure. When there was during the Jersey drone flap, there was the Ocean County Sheriff's Department had actually launched their own industrial drones to follow these objects or try to get to close proximity to these objects. And they had a FLIR camera. They had a good FLIR camera on the drone with a visible camera, and they were able to. They did get a good image with the visible camera, but they had a very difficult time getting a thermal image of these particular drone-like objects.
Right, and also detecting them. If you're using spectrum analyzers, they're very difficult to get a signal. If they're being remotely controlled, you would expect to see some kind of a remote signal locally to the drone, and that's not the case. We've detected transient signals, and transitory signals, which are they are very brief, but they're certainly not there long enough to exercise any kind of control.
Yeah, you don't get all this information sidebands you would normally get with a remote control for a drone.
Right. What I mean by transient is you'll get a carrier. You'll get a single, very narrow pulse carrier, but nothing along the sides of the signal, like frequency modulation or pulse mod, something that would have some control data, to manipulate the drone. That's unusual.
The other thing is that law enforcement had deployed drone busters, handheld drone busters, and they were unable to disable these objects.
So what do you make of that?
That's quite interesting because they're not typical. They're nothing like typical commercial drones.
Yeah, any commercial drone. I mean, if you're transmitting a strong enough signal, a microwave signal, or basically a mixed RF signal, it should be enough to basically cancel or cause a communication link failure. And
okay, well, what if these are programmed to go autonomously?
Well, then you're talking about who's actually running them, though. Then you'd be talking about an agency with the resources to actually deploy things like that.
Right. And then now you're talking something that goes beyond any kind of consumer type of drone.
Right.
And, even commercially available drones. It's you're talking about a tech that's a little bit more advanced.
Oh, well, I'm only bringing that up because I don't know. I'm not.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, military, yes. Commercial, I wouldn't think so.
Now, let's skip back a little bit to the orbs because I have a couple of questions about that. I had interviewed a person named Terry was his first name. I think his last name was Ray. I may have that wrong, but he wrote a book on orange orbs because people were seeing so many orange orbs at one time. But of the question I'm asking you, what is the most common color of orb that you see?
That's pretty common.
Orange.
We've seen the orange orbs. We've actually had them. Actually, when we would zoom in on them, they would actually disappear. We actually saw them hovering over the beach. The other thing is that along the coastline, there have been quite a few eyewitness reports of people seeing these fireball or orange orbs off the coastline.
They look like starbursts at times too.
This is along the entire coastlines from Florida and right up to the New York area.
Has anyone asked you to go places like, out? I mean, I don't know how that thing is equipped for a long distance, but Have people asked you to drive to other
We
areas where there's flaps?
yeah, I mean it's Pennsylvania or New Jersey when where a lot of the activity was. But we had quite a bit here on the island that we were also deeply involved in. But as far as taking the RV out there, it's not an easy task. I mean, it's you got bridge concerns, and it's got cameras all over it. It's got radar.
Oh yeah. That's right. I saw that hanging on the front. The thing you have to adjust down and all.
Then it's the gas he uses, the maintenance cost.
Yeah, well, that too.
I
But
bet it's a gas hog. Yeah.
But even on the bridges, I mean, without certain permissions, we have, you can't have cameras, active cameras all over the place and that sort of thing, and we did reach out, that's something that's got to be early enough in the planning stages for us to do that.
Now, someone wants to ask this question, and it was something I was going to ask. Do we get to look at these videos? Can we see some of the videos?
Sure, absolutely.
And are they on your website?
They're actually on they're on a Google Drive. They're some of the permissions I've taken off, where they're accessible. Others they're going to be on our website very soon, which is it's a domain name. It's Nightcrawler.
It's right here.
OnTheSky.org.
Yep, it's right below your name right here.
Okay. That's it.
And I will. That is already in the notes below. But anyway, if you want to send a link or two to the Google Drive until you get those up on your website, that would be great. The other thing I was thinking about earlier on is I understand that you had some type of USO encounter that you were able to witness a USO, like one that came out of the water type of situation.
Yes.
So can you talk about that?
Right. So we've had actually a few of observations where these objects, they'd appear to be, they would, we'd watch them transverse back and forth over the horizon. And then in some cases, they would drop down to the level of the water, surface of the water, and then we'd see them just almost like disappear, submerge. They seem to submerge under the water. In short periods of time, they would come back out, and then we'd see them, increase their altitude very, very, very quickly. Some of the observations we have, we don't see any disturbances around the water, so it's difficult. It's difficult to, without seeing a splash and that sort of thing, to know exactly what happened. But but by visually, when you're looking at it, it does look like it's submerging under the water, but to no disturbance. And you don't see that water displacement. Yeah, that wake.
Yeah, I mean that's the one thing you hear that's not uncommon, is that the transmedium, as they say, and the thing that puzzled me when I first started looking into this is, first of all, no sound. That's what object that I saw was no sound. Secondly, no sonic boom. No. These things are going a lot faster than the speed of sound, and we should hear some type of sonic boom, which is a big puzzle. And then the third thing is, many people saying they see these things go into the water and no splash.
Right. Right. Yes.
Which defies everything we know in physics, but somehow we could reverse engineer somehow how they do it. I don't ever know. But here's another question. Are you using any form of active radar? If so, at what power level and frequency range, if you don't mind sharing?
Sure. So the active radars that we're using are they have to be licensed, especially marine-based X-band radars. We had to get FCC licensing approval for that as an experimental. It's called an experimental license, and of course you have to show it's by location, and it's a process. It's a process to go through. The radar itself is a typical 9.4 gigahertz, 3-centimeter beam, and they have a range roughly about 60 miles. We have two different types of radar. We use a Y-scan, Y geometry, Y-scan geometry, and an X-band. which is horizontal, which is typically what you see on a boat.
I see. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you'll see these are radomes with the scanner underneath the radome. And if you look at our vehicle, you'll see that one of the radomes are actually mounted vertically. So
Mm-hmm.
we're scanning almost 180 degrees up into the atmosphere. So we can get altitudes, roughly 80,000 feet. And if we're getting high altitude aircraft, or if there's something that is crossing the path of the laboratory, we can get a 4-mile swath of these objects based upon its altitude.
Yeah, basically those two geometries that we have in the city line, one horizontal, one vertical, is to get a better cross section of a target.
Now, can you actually track the speed of an object?
Yes. Yeah.
Wow.
So we have the typical PPI display, that radial display, and you'll see, we have, you get the timing pulses. You can see how many miles, how far it traveled in that period of time. We also have a millimeter wave radar, which is basically a Doppler velocity, plotting velocity. It's, these Doppler radars are limited in power. They have a range of about roughly about 3 miles. And a lot of these things you'll see to a lesser degree turn up at sports events, that sort of thing, where they're clocking the speed of a baseball.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Anything to report on that? Anything unusual for speed?
Yes, we have had objects that would surpass the speed of sound, and no sonic booms. Nothing to hear.
And these particular portable radars, I mean, these have been augmented too, so they're heightened sensitivity.
Yeah. We've increased the sensitivity on the receiving sensitivity on these radars to specifically look for those returns. Most of the radars out there, if a sports event is generally going to give you roughly about a half a mile, something the size of a car, which is pretty decent. It's 2,000 feet, 2,500 feet thereabouts.
I think there should be a weekly TV series on you guys out there. Of course, they'll always try to spectacularize whatever it is, but I mean, I think it's so cool that you have this and you're doing it, and I think it's really great. Here's another question here: does the lack of thermal indicate an exotic propulsion?
It could be. It's we're investigating something right now, and it's this is something that we've been observing for over the last 3 years. Over the past year, we've actually focused a little bit more on anomalous propagation of radio waves. Same thing with light. We're looking at some of these objects, and what separates them from some of the prosaic stuff or starlight is that these objects seem to have a chromatic display, where you can see they almost look like a kaleidoscope, a rotating kaleidoscope when you're looking at these objects.
Wow!
And you'll see very defined dark borders that seem to pop up around the object. And
what do you make of that?
We kind of believe that it might be some kind of a gravitational lens. There's another research crew that is looking into this. They've actually written a book. Chad Wanless has been doing research into the Alcubierre drive, warp drive, and we kind of believe that that he may be onto something here. That effect, that principle, maybe maybe the propulsion system that these things are utilizing, where they're actually they're bending space time around them. The gravitational bends, and what's causing the lensing. And also what's causing this chromatic effect with lighting. If you look at distant stars, and astronomers have been following this, of course, for long periods of time. When you're around a mass, a large mass, the light bends around the mass, and it causes a gravitational lens. So it distorts the returns, it distorts the light, even to elongating the light, and causing long delay or longer delay light from coming back. In our case, it's radio waves. It's what we call long delay echoes. where we expect when we transmit a pulse, and where we actually have a system mocked up for that, where we can look at the specific signals in the radar itself. They're transmit and receive signals. We can time it. We can look at that transmitted pulse, look at the return, and those returns we would expect. Let's say something that was out 15, 20 miles. We expect that return to come back in at less than a microsecond. And what we're having, we have these signals coming back in milliseconds. Which is very odd.
Yeah.
We're also getting multiple returns, and we're getting propagation distortion on the radar in the visual range of a ship. When we target our radars out at a large ship on the horizon that may be out 20, 25 miles, if we see an observation of an orb in the line of sight between us and the ship, we'll get these oddities. We'll get these propagation distortions on our radar, on the PPI. And it's a very, very, very unusual. And we've been documenting this over time.
Yes, basically, to go a little further, we had written a paper on this. We believe the one possibility is a warp drive, like John mentioned, now could be air drive. Something is a theoretical warp drive that would cause the kind of things we're seeing, the properties we're seeing. And the interesting thing is this other engineering team, John mentioned, Chad Wanless. He works with another professor of electrical engineering named David. They're both in Canada, researchers in Canada. But they're seeing properties that suggest the warp drive, and we're seeing properties that suggest the warp drive. So what we're doing is we're collaborating, and we're trying to verify.
I love hearing that. That's great. Do you think there's any possibility that any part of what you're witnessing could be secret military?
That could be. That's not off the table. I mean, it's definitely a possibility, especially if there is anything to the reverse engineering programs that they have.
Yeah, that's true. That's a whole nother.
Assuming they have.
That's a whole nother thing.
Yes.
And here's what I consider another great question from Victor. Have you ever detected something coming in from space? Well, you said you can go up 14 miles, right?
Yeah,
so that's not space.
Yeah, no, we're not at that level. But the most of the scans, we try not to do a zenith scan. We try not to look straight, overhead. You see a lot of satellites, and that can be confusing in itself. There's a satellite glare, the flaring action of satellite, reflections from the panels, the solar panels, that sort of thing. So you can see glinting at times. Most of the observations that we're focusing on is generally just over the horizon. And at a distance outward from us.
I see.
So, there are many times that we'll see an object and it'll turn out to be we're tracking a satellite or something along those lines.
And we'll use satellite apps too.
I was just going to say, I bet you have apps for that to cross-reference. Have you ever had any surprise visits from the Department of Energy personnel?
We have had a surprise visit out there from people in dark SUVs. They came out of probably about midnight, a little after midnight. Nobody's supposed to be out there. Like I said, you have to have a research permit, or you would have to have a sky gazer's permit. These people, there were several of these vehicles that parked behind our mobile lab, and they were in an arc behind us. Tinted windows, dark vehicles. They had their high beams on so they could see us, but we couldn't see them. They were there for maybe an hour, and they could.
Wow,
they were
that's annoying.
Yeah, they're observing what we were doing out there for at least an hour.
Yeah. And, we have been in contact with some authorities and so forth, and it's of course nobody's really owning up to it. And we do try. We try to work with federal agencies as well.
Yeah, the Department of Energy comes up quite a bit, and when it comes to this topic, which is kind of bizarre. And the first time I'd heard that was when I interviewed, a former Marine talking about that's who he believed these guys were that showed up at this UFO crash site, in black camo with American weapons and American accent. That's the only one he could figure out that it would be, and I think that's a possibility. And I know Lou Elizondo mentioned something about the Department of Energy, is very involved which doesn't seem logically right, but I guess if you really look into it, it does make sense.
Yeah.
So have you noticed any time anomalies?
Yes.
Oh, really? I'd love to hear that.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So, let's talk about that video.
Yeah. So we had an unusual set of circumstances with some of the camera equipment on the Nightcrawler on the mobile lab. We had one night where we were looking or tracking between 5 and 6 orbs of light out on the horizon over the water, and some of them we could see visibly, others we couldn't see. You could only see them in the night vision, either low luminance or infrared, in the infrared spectrum. And we decided to basically let the external cameras record, keep recording. Basically our little bit of a journey that we took, this little trek down by the water towards these objects. And what was interesting is that the camera systems recorded about 2 minutes worth of video, and recorded our return within that 2 minutes. And
really?
we were out there, we figured at least 20 to 22 minutes.
Oh, that's so bizarre.
And we couldn't really explain it. It's an odd recording because it looked complete. It didn't look like it was interrupted. Of course, it's possible, but generally I've never seen that before with the camera equipment that we have. But the fact that it recorded us leaving the RV and 2 minutes later returning.
There's other parts. As we were walking towards the beach, and there was an orb-like object that was closer to the beach that we were trying to get to see. When we were walking down there, we had a bright flashlight. You could see everything on camera, and everything. At a certain point, when we were walking down there, you don't see anything. You don't even see us. And then in the video, you see us coming back.
Jeez.
Within a 10-minute time span, but we, like John said, we were out there like maybe 22 minutes. Right?
Wow, that is crazy. I'm so glad that person. By the way, I have to say, you people in chat have been really, putting on your A game tonight. Thank you so much for the great questions.
Yes, great.
So, when this, I have to ask you guys: have you ever been afraid?
Yes, there was an incident in August. Actually, there was a couple of incidents.
Yeah, the one in particular is early on in the research. We had started in July, and in August 28th, in 2022, we were down. Rob Moses, we had just pulled up on the central monitor inside the RV. We could see a triad or a triangular formation of orbs out over the horizon, and they were pretty bright in the infrared. The cameras in the front it's an infrared camera. When we went out to look at it, we saw nothing in the visible spectrum at all. There's 4 of us there. None of us could see this formation, only on the monitors.
And with our portable cameras,
and of course the night vision cameras.
Yeah.
As the others were setting up, we had 4 people. The other 2 people were setting up. Gerald and I made our way down to the beach, down a path, which is roughly about 106 meters from the RV. As we got closer to the water's edge, we noticed that the noise levels in the cameras were increasing, video and audio noise, like a graininess or a color confetti.
Oh, I see. Mm-hmm.
And you could hear it. You could hear that hissing sound getting louder and louder. And Gerald's camera was more susceptible to mine, but he had a plastic enclosure. Mine was metal on my camera, which blocked almost like an EMI shield. When we got down there, we were surprised not to be able to see or hear anything, but in the cameras themselves, in the optics, they were very bright, intense, especially in the lunar optics that I have. and I decided to put an infrared. It has an infrared emitter, and I decided to light it up with an infrared emitter. And I noticed as I moved the camera across the scanning across the object itself, the objects, I could reflect light off of them. I could reflect this infrared light off the object. So I knew it wasn't that far. You know, it couldn't have been any more than maybe 1,500 feet from where we were standing, and at an elevation of roughly about 300 feet from the surface of the water. So after about the 7th attempt back and forth, I noticed I saw a rectangular source of light, and it was much more reflective to my camera. And I decided to put the rangefinder on, and the rangefinder would flash every second. Every time that a rangefinder flashed, you could see this rectangular form of light.
Huh.
And within about 3 seconds, with each flash, that rectangular beam of light got extremely close until it was on top of us. Every time they counted down, in 3 seconds time, it was completely on top of us.
Jeez.
And it actually overloaded the camera. You could see this intense light all over. And when I took the binocular from my eyes, I couldn't see a thing. Nothing in the visible spectrum. When I put it back, I could see this just flashes of light, intense light. And Gerald had captured something on his camera. It looked like a blue orb tracking over the water and then forming a wedge pattern on the beach, a large wedge pattern. And that was the only. It was only in 3 frames worth of video. In my camera actually stopped recording at that point, and it was intermittent. And I said to my brother, I said, let's get away from the shore. We have to get away from the shore. I had no idea what this was. And as I turned and to pivot and move up the shore, my legs gave out. I had no control of my legs from my waist down. I couldn't coordinate my muscles. Almost spastic in a way. It's I just couldn't get my legs under me to pick myself back up.
Has that ever happened to you before?
No. I mean, I have some neurological issues, but nothing like that. Nothing like that.
And we got to go a step further. Is John had fallen on the beach, and I asked what happened because I heard a thud. So I went to help him up, and as I was trying to help him up, my legs collapsed.
Oh,
and
my
the same
God.
thing. I have no strength in my legs. I couldnn't coordinate them.
You were about to be abducted. That was going to happen.
It
seemed like a form of flaccid paralysis from the waist down.
Right, but it only lasted 45 seconds.
Yeah.
Roughly 45 seconds, based on the timing with the cameras. And once we were able to coordinate our legs, we made our way back up to the RV. But we had looked at the recording several hours later, and we noticed that in the cameras you saw this intense flashes of light in the camera itself, and it almost looked like a centralized structure of light moving around the optics back and forth. Can't really explain it because most cameras have an automatic iris that closes down when the intensity of the light gets too bright.
Right.
It's pain control, and either it wasn't working, or somehow the light got beyond the iris and was up against the image sensor.
It seemed more likely that the light got beyond the iris.
And also that camera, there's macro settings that are stored in the memory, in the non-volatile memory, and those macro settings were corrupted. I actually had to reinitialize that camera to get those settings back. And that's the kind of thing that I would see. I was a service technician for quite a while, a video service technician, and I used to see stuff like that after an electrical storm, where the memory locations would be corrupted like that.
Wow. Did you guys almost hang it up after that? Or get more curious?
It took some adjusting. We were startled. We were shaken up. We were startled.
Especially when you're losing the ability to walk.
Yeah.
I mean,
And
That's bizarre.
there was physiological effects that lasted roughly about I would say 24 to 48 hours.
Really?
Where we had I felt that like my lymph nodes were inflamed under my arms.
Uh-huh.
Gerald felt it in his neck.
Jeez.
You know,
There's also fatigue
and fatigue.
Yeah.
You know, so
I'd almost want to get checked out at the hospital after something like that.
Yeah, we actually tried later on. He said it was too late by that point. It should have been done right away. Still can't wrap our heads around what happened. And we've talked to medical personnel about it. Of course, the ones that believed the situation, believed the story, had a lot of different theories about it, but nothing that that would make any sense.
Wow. I'm so glad I asked that question. Do you think that you're seeing any classic blue shifting?
Yes.
Oh, yes?
Yes. So these objects that we're talking about before with this chromatic aberration around them, if you look at them, you'll see, and we've gone frame by frame, these objects seem to rotate. And as they rotate, they seem to blue shift as they move into the direction of the observer, and red shift as they're rotating away. Almost like as though there was a distortion, a gravitational distortion around the object itself. I mean, this is the kind of stuff you see in deep space, with this red shift and blue shift. But we've had quite a few recordings. We've had videos that were sent to us by other observers, and you can clearly see this chromatic distortion.
Wow. We got a question over from Twitter, or X as it is now. Do you have any info on the green color orbs? Now, I did ask you about, the different colors, orange. I'm sure that green is part of that. What are some other colors? But let's first of all answer this question here. Do you have any info on, well, you don't really know what any of the orbs are.
We don't.
We've seen all the different colors. We've seen the green orbs, green. We've seen orange. We've seen blue. We've seen red.
White. I mean,
white.
It's but they all seem to exhibit the same chromatic effects.
Mm-hmm. Now, I got to tell you, I talked to a pilot. He was a former Air Force pilot. And he works for American Airlines as a pilot today, or when I had talked to him. And he said that he had a green orb following his F-8 when he was doing a cross-country relocate. The thing followed him for 300 miles at his speed and lit up his whole cockpit.
Right.
Quite interesting.
Is it F-18? Is it?
Yeah. Or no, it was an F. It was an old, he retired out of the F-8, I thought he said, but I'm not. Yeah. I don't know if I have that right, but still, just the fact that the green orb, and he said it was so bright it just lit it up like daylight.
Right. Yeah, we've heard stories about also inside of the cabins of cars being lit up by these orbs as well.
Yeah.
I mean, this goes right back to the Foo Fighters that you were reported.
That's right. Yeah. The 1940s. So, what do you think of? Do you think that there's any type of cloaking technology? You kind of mentioned something about how they can disappear.
We believe what we're seeing is, like I said, this that they seem to be able to shift their spectral range at will deliberately.
Yeah.
So that would be evidence of some kind of cloaking.
Right. And also these objects seem to go dark also. Where you'll see them and no reflective characteristics. They're just almost like a black body source. They just go dark. And we've seen observations where, if you got enough detail in the camera, and some of the camera we have a higher resolution, you can see that that the object seems to be darker than the rest of the atmosphere around it. They just seem to be just a bit darker. And almost like the absence of light, which is kind of odd.
When you hear the absence of sound, you hear that too as well. I just want to say hi to Tom King from, he's known from the Phoenix Lights. Thank you for stopping in, Tom. Here's another question here. Have you ever been invited to places such as Skinwalker Ranch? I mean, that would be a long haul for that thing.
You know something that we'd love to.
Yeah, we have.
Yeah.
We heard that that they were folks from Skinwalker Ranch were attempting to contact us, but to date we haven't got a formal.
Well, I have connections that I can. I'd be glad to
sure.
Help connect you. That would be good. I'd be happy to do that. So, have you ever caught? Someone wants to know about a humanoid, but has there ever been any like entities involved in any of the sightings that you've seen?
Well, here's a few interesting things. There was one night out there. Well, actually, it was a couple nights. It was one night in particular. We had we were out there. It was about 2 o'clock, between 2 and 3 in the morning, and we had noticed a fresh set of bare footprints in the wet sand that started in the middle of the beach. There was no trail heading their way or coming from. It starts in the middle of the beach, and there's 3 pairs of these footprints heading towards the water, but they were abnormal footprints. They had 6 toes. The toes were like double the length of typical toes.
Did you take pictures of that or get information?
Yeah, we actually took a thermal image too to see how fresh they were. They were fresh. They were there only maybe
still
10
radiating
minutes, 15 minutes.
Still radiating heat.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, I don't want to go all wacky on you guys, but I mean, they do talk about animals that all of a sudden they're chasing an animal, this unusual thing, and all of a sudden there's no footprints gone.
Yeah. Yep.
Which is wow. And here is, do you ever feel that there's ever been any attempt to communicate? These are great questions, everyone. Thank you.
Right.
Yes.
I would go back to that August incident. I think that, what happened at that time, I think, not only, I think what we were up against was some kind of a threat assessment.
It was an intelligent response.
It was an intelligent response. Yes.
It was a behavior. And we've seen that before.
And, I mean, I don't know how far down I want to go down the rabbit hole, but, always a feeling of not being alone, shadows, interesting shadows that there's no source of light, but just shadows.
Is this kind of what you're talking about earlier, the hitchhiker effect?
Yes, the hitchhiker effect. Yeah. We actually have a recording of the Nightcrawler at my home where the street lights went out around the Nightcrawler, 4 street lights, and a beam of light seemed to grow on the back of the RV. You can see this off the metal structure, and almost like an object that was descending. And I believe that the street lights have a photo interrupter, a photo cell on the top of the lamps themselves that detects sunlight. So in the morning they shut off. And I believe that whatever this was, even infrared light can cause these photo interrupters, these photo cells to kill the light. And all 4 street lights went off at the same time.
The interesting thing is the light would have to be above those photocells.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, because they're facing skyward.
Right, to shut them off.
Right.
Yeah. So weird. This has been such a great conversation. I have to say, I hope this is one of several conversations that we have.
Sure.
It's just been that great. This is just a notation here. Was that an example of instantaneous sensor dissembly?
I'm not sure what meant by dissembly, but the sensors themselves have introduced some odd electromagnetic interference. Especially the last one we talked about was the street lights going out. The cameras had an interference Venetian blind effect, and you could see that these lines were getting closer and closer together, horizontal lines, which would indicate an increase in frequency of this electromagnetic field. And it disturbed all the cameras at one time. But you could still see that there was something out there. You could see that the When the streetlights finally recovered after a short period of time, they sequentially restarted again. And once this object was no longer there.
And we've had other effects. We've had a lot of these electromagnetic effects. Our generator was shut down twice.
Right.
We've had our batteries drained.
Yeah.
That was a question I was going to ask you at one
Right.
point.
Yeah.
You've had that happen.
Yes.
That seems to happen a lot when it comes to this.
Yes.
Yeah.
We actually had a film crew out there doing a documentary, and they had a charge pack that had roughly about 7 or 8 batteries on it. And once they charged, they couldn't understand why the batteries were showing 1/3 life, 1/4 life, and they would have to repeatedly to recharge these batteries.
That's something.
Yeah.
Well, you two have been just fantastic. Thank you, and
Thank you.
Gerry, thank you for running over and making this happen. I'm sorry you had trouble with your computer, but
Next time we'll make
a
sure
pleasure.
it's not an issue.
You guys might be hearing from me, for a road trip. I might make the road trip.
Sounds good.
You're welcome.
I have cousins down there anyway, but
Great.
yeah, I'd love to see this firsthand. But thanks so much. It's been a real pleasure. I really enjoyed it.
It's been a pleasure.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, take care.
Have
All right, everyone. So I will be back next week with Anthony DiLorenzo and Ryan Wood. And thank you all. Again, I want to thank all those people that were watching this live with such great questions. And thanks again, everyone, all the listeners and all that. And remember to keep your eyes to the sky. It's almost their logo. Eyes to the sky, I think theirs is. But keep your eyes to the sky, as I always say.